Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond. I am Carey Conley, your host, and I get the honor every single week that I do these podcasts to introduce you to some amazing people in my life. And I'm thrilled today to be bringing you somebody that I met, a couple of years ago, I'm guessing, through a networking organization that we both belong to called Leadership Global. And she rocked my world from the moment I heard her speak. She is just an extraordinary human, to the extent that when I decided this year to start dealing with some of my own trauma, I reached out to Sally and hired her to be my coach. So we've been working together for several months, and I want to just take a minute to just kind of give you a little bit of a bio on Sally, and then I'm just going to have her talk about some of her story and a really interesting methodology that she uses on me and with her clients. So this is Sally Anderson, everybody. She's the founder of Equanimity and co-creative mastery and visionary force of nature, which is the truth. She works with clients to make quantifiable results very quickly, but also to have the transformation process sustainable, which I don't know if any of you have ever worked with coaches, but sometimes that's not the case. You might go through a process that works for the moment, but it's not a big shift that you can carry on with for life. She's endured unthinkable trauma, and I'm going to have her share a little bit of her story, and mental dysfunction, and is one of the most powerful and most resilient women I know. She has unique method that I am going to have her walk through, as I mentioned earlier, and I want you to take this away if you are somebody that really needs to make some sustainable changes. So, Sally, thank you so much for being here with me, because I know you do not do these interviews anymore, so I'm honored.
An absolute privilege to be in your presence and to be on your show. So thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. And I know you're coming from Dubai, which is even a bigger thank you, because it's late there for you. So I appreciate you, little traveler. Been doing a lot of traveling lately.
Yeah, I did a week in Vegas, a week in Los Angeles, 4 days in Pensacola, Florida, a week in New York, 3 weeks in Dallas, and I've just done 2 weeks in Dubai, and I'm ready to go home. Back to New Zealand. So I fly out on Thursday.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a phenomenal trip.
Yeah.
And got to meet you.
Yes, finally. It's so interesting when we meet people on Zoom for so long and then we finally meet in person. It's just such a treat. So I was thrilled that I got to see you in Vegas. And I know you are excited to go home. You've been gone for a long time.
Yeah, 8 weeks.
Yeah. Making huge impact and huge waves in your world. And I I'm so honored that I met you and I've become a client of yours, because you've helped me so much make some big shifts in how I think and how I respond to my thoughts, and change those thoughts and continue to work on that, because it's not an easy transformation. I've shared many times here with my audience that what I've been through in the past 9 years, losing 2 family members to suicide. And, you just don't realize how much that changes you at a cellular level until you start becoming aware of how much it's changed you. And I have been working with you now for, 4 or 5 months. And I think the biggest thing for me, Sally, is learning not only your background and what you've been through, but also to see how you've been able to change your own trauma in your life, and how you are helping me become aware of how much I can change what I'm thinking. So I don't know, can you go ahead and share a little bit of your story, some of the trauma you've been through? Whatever you feel like sharing would be great.
Sure. I'll probably prefix this with a statement that I make, that your story does not define who you are, but it is the backbone of your character and how you show up in the world. A lot of people feel that the cards that they've been dealt have been unfair. So having coached tens of thousands of people in trauma, having overcome my own trauma, there's certain things that come with the human territory as far as being human is concerned. And before I give context to what I've experienced, which has me think the way I think and do what I do, I really, really, really care about those that have struggled to get beyond their trauma, especially if it's been decades. And I dare say there's people probably listen to your podcast who are in that situation. And to me, part of the work that I do is stop people hurting permanently, because I believe that if you have been dealt some cards, then that has been predestined. And again, everything I say today is only my opinion, but it's the only way that I've been able to reconcile, and for that of my clients. I believe we all have an individual contract. It's my only way of being able to understand why some people go through some things and others not. So I must have had a really off day the day that I chose my contract. There's a few times that I've said that. I'm conscious of the time that we've got, so I'm going to just speak into the cross-section of things that I've experienced and where my thinking's at with reference to part of what I teach. So I'm from New Zealand, and at the age of 15, it was one of the worst reported gang rapes in the history of New Zealand in the early 80s. I was abducted by a notorious gang in New Zealand called the Mongrel Mob, thrown onto a butcher's block, raped from every orifice by more than 100 gang members, pretty much left for dead, picked up after a 10, 12-hour vigil of being abused, and then thrown onto the back of a truck, literally like a sheep carcass. Rapes continued on the drive to the next gang location 2.5 hours away. Rapes continued when we got there until I lost consciousness. Nobody survives an experience like that, but I did. So when you've gone beyond the comprehension of human terror and come back of your own accord, you kind of like learn a few things, and the way that you think is very different. In the early 80s, there was no support for the victim. So how I was treated by the police, how I was treated by the medical fraternity was horrendous, and my parents didn't know how to deal with it. So their way of dealing with it was acting like it didn't happen, and so there was no support. So I spent 20 years of being a course junkie, name a book, a CD, a course, read it, listened to it, went to it pretty much for a good 20 years. And I struggled to sustain the change. I could get as highly knowledgeable about certain aspects of getting beyond the past, but the incessant inner critic 24/7 high volume couldn't turn it off. The fear and anxiety attacks as a way of being, the 20,000 addictions, the body dysmorphia to the extreme. Who would want a woman like me, being so soiled, so damaged, all the stories that you make up about yourself. So to me, the Mongrel Mob really are my spiritual initiators about what I do today, because had it not happened exactly the way that it did, I wouldn't have learnt what I've learnt, and I wouldn't know what I know. So I'm a coach intuitive. I coach to cause versus symptom. I'm interested in people sustaining change, not just becoming knowledgeable about something. I'm interested in people stopping hurting permanently so that they can be a bigger contributor in the world. I believe that if you've experienced any level of trauma, part of your job is to pay forward your knowledge, having transcended it. That is your responsibility, in my opinion. I've experienced multiple deaths. So my father died of prostate cancer. My sister died of breast cancer. My brother died in a car accident. I've had multiple friends die. And then 2 years ago, my husband died. He went for the Pfizer vaccine on a Friday, and he died by the Sunday. Different deaths denote different experiences, different feelings. And the death of my husband, I thought I understood death. But I experienced a love that most people only dream of. And for that, I was grateful to have spent the 13 years that I did with him. I was character assassinated 5-6 years ago, which is part of the reason why I'm off the public domain. I'm actually using that as a point of reference in this cancel culture, crisis management. There is when you've had your character defamed to the degree that I have, when you've been attacked online to the degree that I have, when all you've tried to do is kill people, try and navigate a business when your reputation's been annihilated, and then it goes global, CNN, Fox News, BBC World, globally annihilated. So if you Google my name, it's not pretty. And the irony now, and I lost everything bankruptcy wise 5 years ago. Pretty sobering at 53 to lose everything when you work so hard all your life. And it's one thing to experience that as a single person, another thing to experience it within a marriage. My husband had a triple bypass, 2 strokes, a carotid artery operation to the third. I'm trying to keep my husband alive. So I understand adversity. I understand what it means to bring a new meaning to the word resiliency. Like, I really want to hang out with her. She talks about gang rapes and character assassinations and bankruptcies and bloody people dying. And, so like, you really want to see her, not. But in that, so co-creation and equanimity for me are part of what I've gleaned from the extremity of the adversity that I've experienced. I understand pain. I rate myself as one of the best trauma coaches around, and that's got nothing to do with my ego. So I specialize in what I term the default DNA blueprint. I believe everybody, we have individual fingerprints, we have individual DNA. I believe we all have an individual default mechanism. And as you pointed to earlier, the opportunity to maybe, go through the rest of the process that I spoke about would be really helpful as far as the tool is concerned. But co-creation, who you are in your human form is limited, who you are in your co-creative form is limitless. I gave up being a human being a long time ago, all too hard here. So I'm unconsciously confident in my co-creative ability. So I've coached everybody from every religious sect, spiritual sect, atheist sect. Co-creation is the word that I use to honor and respect people's individual faith and belief. And equanimity, I believe, goes beyond self-actualization, the ability to be the observer of what is, not how it could have been, should have been, wanted it to be. And really did master that with the death of my husband. So I'm writing a book at the moment called The Power of Grief. I've done a lot of research around grief. A lot of it frustrates the hell out of me because some of it just doesn't cut it when you're in the height of grief. And I believe the planet post-COVID, we as a human race are experiencing more grief than we ever had before. Loss of income, loss of identity, loss of future dreams, loss of retirement funds, loss of loved ones, loss of businesses, loss. And we in Western society, are not taught how to navigate grief. Or even, the funerals, go and have a cucumber sandwich. You're there for an hour or, 2, and then they're buried, and then, everybody buggers off and you're left with the aftermath,
Right.
So I believe that there's always 2 contexts to everything. There's the empowered context of grief and the disempowered context of grief. And I'm wanting to write a book on the empowered context of grief because there's many things that I've learned specifically since Rog died. My husband, my faith has changed. My ability to channel has changed. My ability to look at the world differently has changed. My confidence in my stand for humanity and the things that I'm wanting to do on this planet, I know are fueled 1,000-fold because of the death of my husband. Had that not happened, I wouldn't have accessed what I'm accessing.
So much to unpack here, Sally. I mean, usually when I have a guest on here, they share one story of adversity, whether it's been mental, physical, financial, all the things. You have them all, my friend. And to say that you co-create, you're so great at reminding me about that, Sally. So wonderful at always reminding me that anytime that I'm in fear or I'm in my default, what you call going down the rabbit holes, right? That I am. You said this to me once, and I've never forgotten it. And I've actually repeated it to a lot of my friends that anytime that I'm going down this rabbit hole of fear, doubt, looking into the past, looking too far in the future, whatever, that I am a disservice to my faith. And because I'm not being an example. And this is so true. And this is probably one of the biggest things I appreciate about you is that you always remind me to come back to that. Because it's the only place where there's peace. Right. And so
the only place.
It's so this whole process of number one, becoming aware that I've gone down the rabbit hole, which I have to tell you, my friend, when you start becoming aware of your thoughts, as I have become more aware working with you, it's an all-day adventure trying to not go down those rabbit holes because you don't realize how many times you have done that. And I think the older you are, the harder it is to catch yourself from going down, because it's been a habit for so long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we've all read the personal development books that say, be careful what you think. Your thoughts create your reality.
Yes.
Right? And the irony of that statement, though, I mean, I call them rabbit holes, where you go out into the future, creating a world that, that you're the ones feeding that, or you're, bringing in something from the past. You and I know, given the work that we do, that there are so many people out there that are hurting.
Yes.
Not realizing that they're the ones creating their suffering.
Yes.
All of human suffering is a function of what we make things mean. So we may as well jump into the rest of the process. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And look, you're going to be so proud of me. You told me when we started working together to print this out and carry it with me everywhere.
Good on you. Well, I'm just conscious, there's people probably listening to this show that have experienced a cross-section of trauma.
Yes.
If there is, now depending on where you are in your grief process, my take on grief is a bit different. When whatever the type of grief that you've experienced, just before I jump into Ressa, there's a stage of instability because it's a shock, that 9 times out of 10 it's not expected.
Right.
So when you're shocked into a situation, obviously everything becomes very unstable, which then hotkeys you into the good old questioning, incessant questioning. Why me? Why is this happening? What's going on? Which I don't care what anybody says. If you're in a stage of grief, you got to stop the questioning. It'll send you mad, literally. You got to be with what is, which is the equanimous viewpoint, the ability to be with what is happening versus how it could have been, should have been, wanted it to be. And then there is, if you've been anointed by an experience of this nature, I believe that you are here to evolve. Sometimes I talk to people about the tap on the shoulder, they ignore it, the 4x2 at the back of the head, they ignore it, and then you get the Mack truck. Sometimes that can occur in the suicide of a partner, the cancer scare, a car accident, some wake-up call of some nature. But gratitude for everything that you've experienced. Am I grateful for the death of my husband? That's a mindfuck. I'm grateful for the learning that I'm willing to learn because I know the alternative. And I know that all of those rabbit holes, all of those thought structures that I could go down of a default-based nature, they all equal the same thing, which is complete and utter disempowerment. So the process that I came up with is very simplistic. I love bringing simplicity to complexity. And you can use this process for if you are in a disempowered feeling or if you have an inner critic conversation. So different people have different volumes of inner critic. I had one of the worst inner critics, 24/7 high volume, couldn't turn it off, which is why I teach people to master their inner critic such that they never hear it. For those of your listeners today, if you're listening to this, who would you be if you, A, didn't go down all those rabbit holes, B, were able to silence your inner critic, and C, were to use the worst thing that's ever happened to you as the best thing that's ever happened to you, as far as what you're here to be doing on the planet. When I've keynoted in the past, my keynote has always been, you're never given anything you can't handle, ever. And we all have a responsibility, I believe. So the Ressa process, the first R stands for reaction. You're reacting to, so let's use fear. You're feeling fearful. That's the feeling. That's the access point. You're in reaction to whatever's occurring. In the first phase in reaction, you actually use the default feeling as an access point to then observe it. You can talk to yourself in the early phases of reaction and go, interesting. I'm feeling fearful right now. It's like kind of matter of fact, right? You're just observing it. So first of all, it's taking you away from being in the feeling to then just observing it. That's in phase 1 of reaction. Jumping into recognition. You ask one question, don't modify it, don't change it, it works. The second one is recognition. What's actually really going on? Again, it's taking you away again from anything to do with fear. What's actually really going on? I'm disconnected from God, higher power, universal force, collective consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I'm disconnected because you cannot be fearful if you're connected. You were born fearless, you were born connected, and you were born intuitive. That was a birthright. And for those of you who've had children, you know that. Anyway, I'm disconnected. I'm hanging out with the little boy, the little girl. If you are disempowered or you are in your inner critic, you got a little boy, little girl running your life 1,000% of the time.
I've heard you say that
you're
so
feeding
many
a
times.
projection. You're feeding a projection. You're either out in the future creating a world that's not even here yet, or you're dragging in something from the past. The goal is identify that fear that you're feeling. Where is it coming from? Or it could be both. You could be dragging in something from the past and also future projecting out into the future. Land that. So I'm disconnected. I'm hanging out with the little boy, the little girl, and I'm feeding a past and future-based projection. Say, got it. Land that. Then how do you change the sensation? So reaction, recognition, evaluation, sensation. How do I change the sensation? So I facilitate with people, what are they motivated by? Important, because if you want to sustain change, you need to know at an emotional level what you're motivated by so that you benchmark everything that you do against the motivation. And I also work with people to identify a new anchor rather than their default-based anchor, their old programming, a new affirmative statement that they could live into. So I can now reconnect to God. I can reassume the adult. I can collapse the projections. I can reconnect to my motivators and my new affirmative statement. And then reaction is the last step, which is the speed with which you move. Now, I'm not into having happy, clappy people. So you can stay in your default. You can stay disconnected in the little boy, little girl. You can continue to feed the directions. My only thing is that you take responsibility for actually knowing what the hell's going on. Because we're going, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? It ain't rocket science. Confusion is the biggest relinquishment bucket for a human being. How convenient you're confused. You don't have to be responsible. Mm-hmm. There's other relinquishment buckets. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough energy. I don't know how. Manifesting illness to abdicate responsibility. I don't have enough energy. Those are throwaway negative affirmations that human beings just, in the retreats that I run, I do a round robin. I go, of the 5, which are you? I'm time and energy, or I'm money and how, and they immediately say it. And I go, well, here's the thing. If you continue to say you don't have money or don't have energy or don't whatever, you're not going to get a result.
Right.
People who are committed will find the money. People who are committed will work out the how. People who are committed will find the energy. People who are committed will not, will look after the well-being to not manifest on. People who are committed, right? So victim is being powerless to change the situation. So that whole reciprocess, whether it's overwhelm, feeling overwhelmed right now, what's actually really going on? Mm-hmm. I'm disconnected. I'm in the little void. Where's it coming from? Past or future? Changing the sensation. You got to look at what the hell you're committed to. I'm interested in sustaining being in my power all the time. Right. I know what it's like to be less than a 10. I know what it's like to be suicidal the majority of my life. I know what it's like. I know hell on earth. I know extreme psychotic psychosis in the most. So I know that side, and I know this side. Yeah. I know which one I'd prefer, right? So I take responsibility for the application. Knowledge is redundant unless it's applied. And in my world, applied beyond the default. If you don't know about your default, you can't take your power back from it, which is why the basis of education is awareness-based training. So if you have an inner critic, who the hell do you think you are? Interesting. My inner critic just said, who the hell do I think I am? What's actually really going on? I'm disconnected from God. And the little boy, little girl, feeding. There's a repetitive thing that happens every time. Same theme for every disempowered feeling, every inner critic conversation. Because when you're connected to source, the national grid, you cannot be fearful, you cannot be overwhelmed, you cannot be stressed, everything is sourced from the national grid. Now, you have a choice whether you're going to be the little boy or the little girl. The access point and understanding that is how you're feeling. If you're feeling disempowered, you're immediately in the wound of the little boy or the little girl. Yeah. And all of the human suffering comes from feeding the projections. So the beauty of this process actually trains you to live in the now, connected. I often say to CEOs, not that they vacuum, but, have you ever tried to vacuum when you haven't plugged it in and turned it on? It's a bit tricky, But most people on this planet are living that way. the good thing about COVID is that it associated people. It actually associated them to the cost of what it is that they're tolerating. So if any of your listeners are on this call tonight and they've been beyond maybe a 5-year period and not being able to get beyond their trauma, I'm here to tell you that the cost, whether this is appropriate, it's coming through, so I'm going to run with it. Dogs sitting on a nail, dogs howling. One guy says to the other guy, "Why's your dog keep on howling?" Other guy says to the other guy, "Dog sitting on a nail." Other guy says to the other guy, "Why didn't the dog just get off the nail?" The other guy says, "Because it doesn't hurt enough yet." Most people have a nail so far up their ass, it's so painful, but it's become normal, and it becomes so disassociated from that. Until you get present to the cost of what it is that you're tolerating and the impact that that has on your relationships, on your relationship with yourself, on your body, on your earning ability, so healing, I am an advocate for healing in every single boardroom in the world. We've got a lot of little boys, little girls running businesses, economies, and countries. I usually coach at a very high level, fish stinks from the head down. And because a lot of those leaders have never done the deep work, we're in such a phase of uncertainty. There is a need to do the work, and that is healing. And I'm not talking about psychoanalyzing your past, but there are some very good healers that are able to facilitate conversations. There's a time for healing and there's a time for coaching. Healing in isolation is not sustainable. Coaching in isolation is not sustainable. Two together, very formidable.
It's interesting that you talk a lot about commitment, Sally, because I actually was interviewed yesterday on a podcast about resiliency. And the woman interviewing me knows my story. I've known her for years. And the big question she was asking me, which might be a great way for us to kind of wrap this up, is why did I feel like I chose, like you said, to be resilient and to do the work and to, go after the healing and make the commitment, versus why some people don't. And I think it has a lot to do with the choice that I am making right now to want to leave a legacy and follow my vision and my purpose. And I think so many people without that anchor of really truly wanting to change, it's very hard, especially if they've been through this kind of trauma, don't you think? So why don't you, if you don't mind, Sally, do you want to leave us with maybe sharing a little bit more about why you think I came to you when I did? Why did I make that choice? And how would somebody recognize that in them making that choice too?
I think you circled me for about a year. I think you were sussing me out. I think you were looking at a cross-section of other coaches, modalities, healers. I think there may have been a listening, this is only my opinion, that I think you were intrigued, but you weren't too sure because obviously that would require trust, which is why you circled for a year. I think from memory, I told you all the reasons why you shouldn't engage with me to go, have a good life. So that if you did step over the threshold, it might be a bit different. I think the biggest thing was that you had been called for this is only my opinion, you had been called for a long time. You were getting the tap on the shoulder and you were getting the 4x2. And I think you were also frustrated because I know you, like me, we've spent a shitload of money, we've seen a lot of people, we've done a lot of work, and we're just wanting the edge. And I think the point that I was making just before around getting present to the cost of, it's all very well to have all the knowledge, it's all very well to have done all this work, but if the results aren't being produced to the degree that you want, considering the game you want to play, I think there was a lot of resonance too. I think we both are legacy is the most profound conversation you can facilitate with a human being on the planet. What are you doing here? What is your DNA calling you to be in the world? We both are passionate about legacy.
Right.
We both have come from different aspects of extreme trauma. We understand, we understand. And so it's like an unspoken language. So I think there's a respect there. And as far as as much as you have the admiration for me, I have the admiration for you, because I have no idea what it would be like to experience what you have. And part of being able to work in this work, you have to have reached a space in your life where you have found peace at a level with what it is that you've experienced, because otherwise you'd be re-traumatizing yourself and stuff, which is one of the other things that I wanted to leave your people with today, is the mantra I live by every single day, which fits into commitment and integrity. To me, again, bringing simplicity to complexity. Is what you are thinking forward in your game? If it's not, don't think it. Is what you're saying forward in the game? If it's not, don't say it. Is what you're doing forward in the game? If it's not, don't do it. And who you're being on a day-to-day basis, is that forward in your game? You need to know what your game is. And a lot of people don't, because they love confusion. And that think, do, say, be forward the game from me taught me integrity, taught me commitment, taught me that there's a sense of urgency to be, which I think is the biggest thing I've learned from grief, is gratitude. Gratitude for my biggest bugbear with people is the lack of gratitude for the amount of life that we have left. I think people who've experienced extreme trauma, who have reconciled their trauma, are here to teach the planet to evolve their consciousness, to be of contribution, to raise the vibration, to have humanity really understand that adversity, rambling a bit here, but adversity for me is at the moment the only way that this human race evolves. Whereas I do believe that if we evolve the consciousness of those who lead, we do not need to manifest adversity to learn. It's only because of the way that we are structured as a society. And I believe part of the game that I'm playing is to be able to change that.
So much here, Sally. I could talk to you forever, which is why I hired you as my coach. I really hope that if you're listening to this and you're watching this, that if you are at a place right now where you just know that you've been dealing with a lot for too long, and the reason I asked you this final question, Sally, is why do you think I came to you when I did? It's because I knew what it was costing me. So it gets to a point where I think we can endure a lot for ourselves, but when you start seeing how it's affecting your relationships and the people that you really want to leave, you really want to have a better relationship with. And the big part of that was my daughter and my grandchildren now. And the people that I'm wanting to work with, which is the young adult community that I'm building. And I know that you know that, Sally. So I appreciate you more than you know for who you are, for what you've been through, the choices that you've made, for constantly reminding me to stay connected to God. And the process, this Rester process, has helped me a lot. So much. So I just want to thank you again for coming on here, taking the time, and teaching so much to my audience. I appreciate you so much in my life.
The God in me acknowledges the God in you. It's a profound privilege. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sally. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. This is Carey Conley reminding you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.